There's working on the bug here, and I just thought of something I was looking at. There's a lot of guys that are swearing by you got to use weld through primer on stuff, and there's really two sides to the coin on that. And a lot of people say, well, you don't do it right if you don't use weld through primer and all this stuff. And let's talk about this a little bit and tell you where I come through from on that particular item. All right, so originally this car was dipped. We'll go take a look at a picture I got for you. If you see here, that car's just coming out of the vat. It was dipped in a wash and then dipped in a rust preventive material, and that got into every orifice of the car. Now, American cars, from what I know, they didn't have this happen. This was one of the reasons that people chose Volkswagens, because they didn't rust as quickly for such a thin little cheap car and lasted quite a long time on the road. But what we're doing today was actually restoring these cars, and for the most part, they're not going to be on the road in the winter, I hope. If you're going to put your car in the winter, oh well, there's another one. We're going to lose another one. So there's no way. I don't care if you put weld through primer on stuff or you don't put weld through primer and you seam seal or whatever you're going to do. Eventually that car is going to rust out again if you drive it on the road in the winter, regardless. I was actually recently watching a show where a guy, or a YouTube video where a guy who actually was cutting a inner fender well back off of a Mustang because it didn't have weld through primer on it when they built the car. So, okay, I think this has just gone a little too far. Look, paint stores, paint companies for years have been figuring out ways to try and sell more products, and they're trying to get as much of your money as they can. And basically, let's talk about what weld through primer is. Weld through primer is a zinc based primer that you spray. Let's say I took this to bare metal right here and I'm going to weld this piece in, which that's what's going to happen. I was just looking at how I'm going to do it. I'm not going to do it this second, but I'm going to weld this piece in here. Once I get this, check the heater channels, I'm going to drop the car down and check, make sure the door shut properly, and I'm pretty sure they will. This actually should have been on the other side, but it won't hurt anything there. So one of the things that weld through primer was designed for is they have a high level of zinc in the primer, and when you hit the primer with your welding, it's supposed to still pin it. You're supposed to still get a spark even though it has primer on it. Now, what happens after you get spark is the metal gets really hot and you melt the two pieces together. Basically, that's what welding is with welding rod. So now, what part of that primer is going to actually survive, and what's actually adhering that zinc to the steel? Is it going to survive the heat that's necessary to weld those two pieces together? And the theory is that, oh yeah, it'll work. Honestly, I think we've just gone too far. As long as it's clean and painted behind, and there's seam sealer in there between the two surfaces, it should be fine for the life of whatever repair you're doing. I think that's my opinion, but do your own, figure it out for yourself. If you think you need to use weld through primer and go through all that stuff and that other step, then go for it. If it makes you feel better, there's a mental hospital up the street if you need to go check yourself in if you're getting too obsessive compulsive. But honestly, especially on an old car like this, you're restoring it, and there's no way I'm going to replicate what the manufacturer did when they built this car. Right? There's no way I'm going to take and put a 40,000 gallon vat together and dip this car in body wash and phosphoric acid, and then go and dip it in another thing that has some sort of a e-coat that is bonded on every side of every piece of and then go through and seam seal everything. You're just not going to be able to do it that way. There's no way, there's no facility to do that. There's no, so every time I tell people this, I say, look, I know I'm going to get some hate. There's going to be some people that aren't going to like this, but you're doing a repair. You're not building the car new again. There's no way you can. And the car's going to live a long time, especially after these repairs are done, usually, and I would hope that most of them won't. They're going to be inside for the rest of their lives. They're going to be inside a garage. They get driven on a weekend, driven at, the amount of use this car is going to get after all this stuff is done is going to be minimal. Because honestly, to drive one of these things every day on the freeway, I mean, I was just going down the freeway yesterday or the other day in my Jetta, and a truck boxed me into a K-rail. I mean, if I was not driving that car with the braking system that's in it, the ABS and everything else, I would not have been able to stop. If I was in this Volkswagen, I would be dead right now. I wouldn't be making this video. So for me to say I'm going to drive one of these things every day would be absolutely stupid. It's not smart to drive one of these things every day at this point in life. There's just, the roads are different, the cars are different, the people are different. And for somebody to think that they're going to drive it every day and that they're going to need weld through primer on something is just way overkill. And the paint stores are cleaning up on it. And I'm sure that PPG is going to love your money. They're going to take your money. They're going to have you putting all the extra primer on, all the extra primers and all the extra materials, and they're going to, U-Pol and some of those companies are going to take your money just no problem, because you're giving it to them. So, think about that. Who are you building the car? Are you building it for the next person who's going to have it in 100 years? Come on. If you're building it for you, it's going to be fine, just with, good set of seam sealer, rust, and the stuff I use, which is rust reformer and stuff like that. That car is going to last a long time. It's going to be a good repair. It's going to last. And people want some kind of permanency. It's just this weird ownership thing that people have, but they have to have, everything last forever. A lady said to me once, I want to put a metal roof on my house because it'll last forever. And I said to her, well, what happens when it starts to rust? And she goes, well, I'll be dead by then. Well, wait a minute. You said forever. There's no such thing as forever. There's a lifetime, there's a lifespan to everything. So, you got to think in realistic numbers. It's kind of like people saying that I want a zero emissions car. Well, you're going to have a zero emissions car. Yeah, okay, you can have a zero emissions car, but the manufacturing emissions for that car are higher, and the maintenance emissions are higher. And when you go get a new one every 5 years, you're going to be polluting just as much as you are by just driving the one that you have. It's all sales gimmick. It's all stuff that, you're buying into. So anyway, just a food for thought, people. If you're looking at weld through primer, if you want to do it, go for it. But honestly, I think seam sealer is going to be a good choice. Talk to you in the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe.